All right, here we go. Overdrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Yo-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and Jonas Siegel from The Athletic.
My guy, I couldn't be happier to see you, and I would just like to wish you one thing, or I hope you do one thing. I hope you and your guy, Juan Soto, send a thank you card to the Jays, because it's going to happen again this year. You just wait. I don't know how the transaction happened last year with Ohtani and the Dodgers. Did he use the Jays to get more money from the Dodgers? But Soto probably called up Ohtani's rep and said, "How'd you play that game, by the way?" And he's going to do the exact same thing.
I think you're referencing Andy Martino, who's a baseball insider down in the States. And Andy is reporting this afternoon that sources have indicated to him the Blue Jays will have the highest bid for your boy Juan Soto. That is the belief, that no one will pay more. No one will offer more.
But, dude, that almost seems like a statement. I want to leak it to somebody. When we don't get this guy, make it known that our offer was higher.
Yes.
Is there any consolation in that? Like, obviously, you're being a little bit, I guess,
tongue-in-cheek,
and you're skeptical that he is actually going to accept the highest dollar, because that is what we have heard for months, right? If you're a Boris client, you go to whichever team is willing to pay you the most money. This should be an uplifting report for Blue Jay fans. What a report. They're willing to spend more than anybody else.
That's taking out of account of what happened last year.
No, I understand that.
Dude, there was a report. We spent an hour saying this guy was coming here on a plane.
But very different. Last year, Ohtani, it was never suggested he'd take the top dollar. That was never on the table. Obviously, he was going to be paid a fortune. He was going to get the biggest contract in sports history. That's what was coming. Whether it was with the Jays.
You think Soto meant that when he said, "I'll just take top dollar"? It doesn't
I don't know.
matter.
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
Boris always indicates that. Soto has indicated that. Do I believe that fully? No, I don't. I think he's going to New York. That has always been my belief. I think he'd personally like to be with the Yankees. I think he liked his time there. Obviously, it's a good team. There's nothing quite like being a New York Yankee. I don't think you can beat it in Major League Baseball. With all the respect to the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Mets and the Jays, I don't think there's anything bigger or better than being a Yankee if you're a top dollar guy in baseball. And I think he knows that, and I think he'd like it. I think he'd be cool with the Mets. If he's got to go to Queens, he goes to Queens. He will go down that road. But the way Boris has operated, the way Soto has operated, including right after losing the World Series, he said, "Come get it. Who wants it?
Show me the money?
Show me the money."
So how much more money do you think the Jays would have to offer to get him?
Well, that's an
above the other team,
because it's not $1 more.
No, but if it's like
it's a lot more than that.
How much more? Jeff, you can answer. Like if it was like $25 million, you're like, yeah, I'll stay in New York. If it's 50,
I honestly think for them to pull the trigger and say, for him to say you have to have X amount, I think it's probably 50 to 75 more minimum.
Yeah.
Which, again, they can do that.
No, I get it, but I think that would be the number. If Rogers and the Jays went to him and said, "Whatever your offer is, we'll give you more," I think Soto's camp would say, for me to accept it or even think about it, it might be 50 to 75 more. That would be the Toronto Blue Jays tax on whatever this guy's going to sign.
It's somewhat reasonable. It sucks for us to hear that. It's borderline insulting.
It's not even reasonable. It's just factual.
Exactly, and it's just the reality. And I think Blue Jay fans are very realistic when it comes to that. That if you're competing with the Yankees, you're competing with maybe the Red Sox. You know, these markets that are rich in history and that also supply a lot more in terms of possible endorsement money around those teams. If you become an all-time great, you can make a lot of money being an all-time great Blue Jay. You can. You'll always be welcome back. You'll be a god here, more so than those markets. Like if Soto signed here, he immediately takes over the city,
the country.
Immediately takes over the country. The red carpet would be extended out unlike anything I think we've ever seen before. And the only thing that could have topped that is if Ohtani did it last year. But if you're an all-time great Yankee and you win a World Series or two, like it's just a completely different stratosphere. And I don't think the Jays can compete with that. So in order to get them over the top, it's going to cost money. the cynic in me wonders if this is being leaked from the Jays to let everyone know
we tried.
We're trying here.
But let me
just so everyone knows, we offered more, and he still said no. What do you want me to do here?
What do you guys think it would be different if the Jays were a better team?
No.
Zero.
Well,
doesn't matter. I mean, let's say the Jays went to the World Series last year.
Sure, it might account for something.
A little bit?
Yes, 5%. I don't. This guy's making a
so he doesn't care.
Altering decision. Well, he's going to be playing somewhere for the next 12 years and living somewhere for 12 years.
It's not like Judge and Garrett Cole are in the same class. It's this guy. He's the king of the county, and it's his time to strike, and everybody just be drooling over him. It's his time.
It's his time. And here's another thing. Another reason why I'm not sure it would matter much for the Jays is that even if they were very competitive last year, the Yankees are competitive every single year.
Yeah. Okay, so what if it was a decade? What if the last decade the Jays were right, let's say they were like the Tampa Bay Lightning of MLB, where it's they go to the final.
Maybe you're tied with the Yankees then. Because again, it doesn't matter what's happened in the past if you're Juan Soto necessarily.
But what if he looked at this team and he's like, this team can win in the next 5 years? Because you look at the team now and you're like, no,
again,
can they win? I don't really think so.
Again, can you ever discount the Yankees being competitive over the next 5 years at any point in their existence?
No, but I mean, they haven't won since 2009.
Okay. Jays were 93.
He said competitive.
But I'm talking competitive.
Right.
You can never guarantee you're going to win a World Series.
No.
You can't. But again, I think the argument, it couldn't hurt for the Jays, for sure. And I'm sure they're making that argument. Yes, this year was an outlier. Prior to that, 90 wins every single year. We're going to the playoffs a lot.
Don't look at the playoff result.
It doesn't matter. It's just about getting there and you get to the dance. But the Yankees will always put up their hands and say, we are going to be competitive.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to think of it if you're Soto. You just know they are going
Well, and it's a brand, right? It's the brand.
Right. So I don't think that argument matters if you're competing with the Yankees. If it's Jays or Yankees, wow, the Jays, I think I can win with them over the next few years. You're going to be able to convince yourself you can do that in New York, too, if you're Juan Soto. Right? I think you could always get to that point.
How do you think he strings them along? Yeah, I might come there, yeah.
Well, I mean, again...
He strings them along like this. I think if you can get your number up towards...
750?
750, I think that might get my attention. And then he goes to the Mets and the Yankees and says, whichever one of you two can get to 725, I'm coming there. Mm-hmm. And then that's how the story goes.
There should just be a group chat with all the teams in it.
Do you think these teams are reluctant to put anything in paper in front of these guys?
For sure.
You can't text Boris, fine, we're in, 12 years, 650, because he will screen grab that and send it to the Yankees immediately.
Oh, you don't think there's greaseball moves either way? I got to be honest, I wouldn't be giving this guy this money. As good
it's
a player
so
as
much money, man.
Dude, it's like, what did Judge sign for? Judge signed for 300?
Yeah, well, less years.
He's older, though, too.
I don't care, man. And this guy, all of a sudden, it's like Ohtani hangover. It's like we didn't get that guy, so we got to give that guy the same amount. This guy's not Ohtani as good.
He's very, very, very good.
He's outstanding. He's an exceptional player. I mean,
it's not your money. What do you care?
Look, man, you could give it to him. I'm not the Mets. I'm not the Yankees, nor am I the Jays. I just wouldn't. I think you're going to be for the Jays, for instance. I think you're going to hand this guy over this money, and you're going to say that team's still no good, and they got a guy that's worth $600 million on it. That's what they're going to have. Well, if the Jays pulled the trigger on this.
I also think if this report is accurate, again, Andy Martino, he's reporting it. He's out of New York. I think he works for the Post. I think he does stuff for the network and all that. If it's accurate, I think it actually is saying that the other teams are not offering these astronomical numbers that people are reporting.
Yeah, you try to get the Mets and the Yankees up?
Well, no, I wonder if all these... I don't think there's collusion among the owners. I don't think that would happen. I certainly don't think it would happen with Steinbrenner and Cohen. But I do think what we've seen in baseball in past years is collectively the owners have come together, whether it is collusion on purpose or just spontaneous and a coincidence. They have come together and kind of squeezed the players. Ohtani's an extreme outlier, extreme because of who he is and what he represents. But a lot of players have just been sitting there waiting to get paid, and they never got paid. Soto is going to get paid. He's going to get his deal. But I wonder if what this is really saying is these other teams are like, we'll give you $450. We're not giving you $7.
Come on.
450 is outrageous for Juan Soto.
He turned down 440.
But it was all deferred, and it was
like
a crazy long-term deal.
From who? San Diego?
From Washington.
From Washington. And that was, again, before a lot of this collusion in baseball was happening. Like, if he got 10 years, 450 right now, you're telling me that he lost the negotiation? $45 million a year for a decade?
I guess the per year wouldn't matter, but it wouldn't look good on Boris after what happened last year, which is what you're talking about, right?
Come on,
last
man.
year,
we've gotten out of hand.
No.
We're getting out of hand if we're saying $450 million wouldn't look good on an agent.
It wouldn't.
Let's
because
get serious, man.
He turned down basically that for a little bit longer 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, but again, deferred money
if the number,
sneaky.
Jeff, like, come on. Like, if you were you were Soto, and everybody's saying you're going to get 600, 650, maybe 700, and then you get 450, you'd be like, fired. You're gone.
But who knows if Boris is actually telling him that?
I just don't know what kind of world we're living in where somebody can pick a great team, a great scenario to live, and get everything perfectly the way you want and make $35 to $45 million for 10 years, and that's not optimal.
This is what,
like, what the hell kind of world
But this is what you're forgetting.
In?
If that's what they can pay him, what do you think they're making?
Well, of course they're making it.
But this is like the part that never gets talked about with player contracts. It's like, that's too much for that player. It's like, well, what do you think the team is making? Like, you know how much the Dodgers are going to make off Ohtani? They're going to make that money back easy.
Well, they've already won a World Series, which is incredibly lucrative. But there's also, I think, one of the updated elements of his current contract is player options. Like, it sounds as if Soto's deal is going to be loaded with opt-outs. 3 years, you can opt out again. 4 years, you can opt out again. I don't know if that was a part of the past option. But again, you asked me, like, where are these numbers coming from? It's all speculation is where it's coming from. Boris at no point has said, I demand 600.
It's not made up, though.
Yes, I think it is people trying to put pieces together based on what Ohtani got, based on his age, based on the teams involved, how desperate Cohen is to get the Yankees. A lot of it is speculative.
A lot of it is, but, like, when stuff is sourced, it's either coming from the team
what
the
source
agent.
report has said that he's getting $600 million?
You're right. No one has.
Like, I think people have projected that it could happen, and I'm not saying that's unreasonable. I have not personally seen
and
something
that's just
saying
post projections off of what Ohtani got.
Right. Like, I haven't seen a report saying this team has offered and said off the record to Jeff Passan or whatever, we'll pay him $600.
So if you were blind, you're blind bidding. That's how they're doing this, right? Like, they're not.
Well, effectively. I mean, if you're Boris, you're not.
So you're the Jays, and you get to go to Soto, and you get to make a blind bid. What would your bid be? You're not bidding. You're not saying 450 by 10.
Well, you can start there. But you can start there. They'll circle back to you.
Okay.
You don't think that that's a reasonable start, though, Jonas?
No. Usually it's like a million or two off. Can you imagine an agent going back and saying, you were actually $300 million off?
Yeah, like that one. And plus, the teams
add a couple more zeros, bud.
The teams have to have an idea. That's the job. That's, on Shapiro and Atkins. But it is a game of chicken. It's like the posting stuff in the past. Remember when like a pitcher would come over from Japan and someone would be like, well, we posted $51 million and $1 because we were thinking that maybe someone would post something different.
Like Price is Right.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, yeah. According to Andy Martino, the Jays, no one's going to outbid them.
What Gerry's percentage would you give the Jays for Soto?
15% they can get.
5.
Jonas?
I think 5 is right.
5?
Jeff, yeah.
But there's like 5 teams involved.
Yeah, but like they're like the.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen.
For you. They're scum to you. You look down on them.
It just seems like they're kind of just being dragged along.
Just move along. We're not interested. I will react if and when it happens, but if it does come out that, let's say, he signs with the Yankees and it's reported the Jays offered him like $50 million more, that to me, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Like
I would totally leak that if I was that front office.
I don't know. I'd be careful with that because of the image it portrays. It portrays that you're wasting everyone's time and you're not a serious player. But won't that be the case either? But shouldn't they just look in the mirror and be like, we're not a serious player. We wasted everyone's time for 2 years going after Ohtani and Soto to the point where we offered them both the most money, and they both said, no, thank you.
What are you supposed to do? Just not try?
Well, I think what it would do is, for me, it's an existential moment if I'm the Blue Jays. We got to stop thinking that we're big game players.
Well,
get in on who we can get in on.
When Tavares was coming up, they were like, we offered 13. It's crazy. We offered more.
Yeah.
It's like... Okay, dude.
Yeah, good for you. You didn't get him.
A good example. Actually.
Good for you. You didn't get him. And I love how that's also been used as we shift to, Tavares as some sort
discount?
of yeah, like
that.
11 million. It's actually
like the
a great
third highest in the league.
Guy's been making.
If anybody brings that up and say, "This is what I've heard before," no, this is what I've heard before. Although, forget he gave you a discount.
A discount.
When he settled for $11 million here. I almost want to gag.
I know. It's such a stupid argument to make.
It's like Stamkos. That was a discount. Was that 8.5?
And let me ask you this: who do you think actually leaked that Tavares news? Do you think it was the San Jose Sharks? Because I don't for a second.
You don't think so?
No.
Oh, right. I guess.
Who do you think would benefit from that in this market?
Because then you can make the discount argument.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, let's be clear here. Why would you, if you're the market, if you're San Jose saying, guys, we're losers, we're such losers, I want it reported and everyone to know.
Well, you're just countering your own point. They would have done that to say that we're in the game.
No, see, but I'm saying I wouldn't want to be in that game. I wouldn't. I think the owner might. The owner might, if he's being
message to the fans.
Yes, that you think I'm cheap, I'm not cheap. If I'm management, though, and I'm in charge of the image of the franchise, I wouldn't want that out there. That even though, because the report was like millions more.
Yeah.
How did you miss
13?
That's the report that they were willing, which to me is insane that was accurate. I'm sorry, I just find that impossible to believe.
Yeah.
Like you're telling me the Leafs were willing to go to 11 and another team was willing to go to 13 and a half or something.
That's the Blue Jays tax. That's what you're talking about.
But Jonas, this was 7 years ago. No one was close to 13 million. John Tavares was a great player and a great UFA.
Young.
He was not Sidney Crosby. He was not Connor McDavid. And he was going to get more than $2 million more in a respective spot. I still find that hard to believe. I found it hard to believe at the time. Anyway, John's in action tonight. The Leafs are going to get cooking here because coming off a win on Saturday, and like that's a good win in Tampa. Mm-hmm. Like I know what happened in the third and all that, but I thought they showed up to play. They were ready to play. Tampa was in a tough spot. No Kucherov. They had played the day before. But you go down to Florida, you take 2 of 4 points, you come home, driver's seat.
Why does Vasilevskiy just look like ordinary Joe when he plays the Leafs?
I don't know, but they're
the weirdest thing.
Yeah,
your lucky Noodles isn't here. I'll tell you what, he'd give you the business
but
now.
It's
just
that's an accurate
numbers.
Man.
It's like 8 goals on like 30-something shots.
Dude, I've noticed. I got a channel surf every night, watch hockey games, and I don't know if it's just bad timing, but when I turn on a Tampa Bay game, he's letting in a bunch of goals. But I'm not saying that because Noodles will literally climb through my return video and strangle me and say he's one of the best goaltenders in the world, which he is. He's proven that in the past. It just seems like there's a lot more rubber going by him than in the past.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
I don't think that's not, like, accurate to say.
It's factual.
Listen, the Leafs, when the Leafs beat them, they beat them because of Vasilevskiy and Laura. If you were to pinpoint one thing, why did the Leafs beat Tampa 2 years ago? Yeah. Vasilevskiy would be the first thing that would pop up into my mind. He was, at times,
outplayed by Samsonov.
And Samsonov had like an .860 save percentage in that series. Samsonov didn't stand on his head.
Nope.
No.
Like, Vasilevskiy just wasn't very good. The Leafs took advantage of it, to their credit. And I thought the Leafs were very clutch. They scored. They won 3 games on the road, all in overtime, I believe.
Like, this is a goaltender that when he got cooking a few years back when they went on their runs, if he got hot, you weren't scoring on him. He was that guy.
Yes.
And as of right now, he needs to return to that guy because he ain't that guy right now.
Well, listen, he played more hockey than maybe anyone in the history of the game in a condensed schedule. Like the COVID bubble, that guy played every single night. Yeah. Every night. And then the next season rolled over quickly. They went back to a cup final. 3 straight cup finals, he played every single game.
And if they were getting shelled in a playoff game, he didn't come out after 4. He stayed in for all 7.
Exactly. He'd stay in battle. Then he had the surgery. Last year, his numbers were not good, and this year's numbers aren't that good.
No,
it's early, but they're average. And sometimes guys get to a point. He's been in the league a long time where you're a big guy, your body breaks down a little bit. You played a lot of hockey, and I think he's out of his prime. That doesn't mean he wouldn't scare me at times. It doesn't mean he's not capable of still being an elite goalie. But I think it's moved on in terms of him wearing the crown in the NHL, where that was indisputable for me like 2 years ago. Like Vasilevskiy was the clear-cut king. Like, he terrified people.
How many playoff games do you think he's played? You guys are right, by the way.
It's got to be 65.
More.
80?
115.
115?
That's like a whole season and change.
Wow.
Games. Like, that's a lot of games.
115. Like, I know they went to 3 straight Cup finals, but that's like 60 games that he'd be starting in that run.
That's
that
like
means
2 extra years of regular season, right?
Big guy, wear and
right.
tear. Yeah, but credit the Leafs for going in there and taking advantage of that on Saturday.
5-on-5 goals. Bunch of them.
That's what you were calling for, right?
Yeah.
5-on-5 goals.
Got to score some 5-on-5 goals.
I'm making a guarantee tonight.
Uh-oh.
The big guy scores tonight.
Oh, yeah, a lot.
I guarantee it, to take a page out of Charles Barkley's book.
Doogie and I were talking.
Matthews rips one home
He
tonight
does not
early.
have a multi-goal game so far this year. That's like going to happen at some
First
point
home
very
game like in 3 weeks. I think he gets chugging tonight. Chicago played yesterday.
I hope this is like a perfect 3-week little break and he just gets chugging into the new year and chugging into the playoffs, and away we go.
Yes.
There's been some rumblings from other people that would never compliment the Leafs that say maybe a little bit different over there this year. And I want to DM them and say, easy now. No, people from like out west, people that have always been like, same old Leafs, they stink. And you never know. They might still be, but it's looking a little different right now. I'm optimistic.
Well, yeah, and listen, a part of it is going to be challenged tonight because Jake McCabe's not playing. I think smart play, precautionary. Berube's downplayed the whole thing. He took a puck up the head, and Berube was like, nah,
he's going to play next game.
He'll be fine. So he's out tonight. But
Hazy, I need some of these young guys to stick around a little bit. I just don't want that fourth line to return with Camp and Reeves. And I talked about how they weren't doing a whole lot. Like at least these guys are like flying up and down the ice and doing something. I like it. And I hope it doesn't change.
It's going to change.
What?
Yeah, well, it
like
is.
once those guys get, like Reeves is going to come back on Wednesday.
Then I hate that part of the game where it's just, I don't know.
You know how
it's
that goes.
I know, but it's stupid.
I'm
It's
with
stupid to just say, you guys are doing too good out there. I'm going to just go back. And I know there's contracts involved and there's money and there's a cap, but it just doesn't make sense, man. Like the coach must be like, okay, change up the lines.
Well,
it sucks. It sucks for the kids too. Like, do you not think Fraser Minton needs to stick around for a little while?
I like his game, but I'm playing the long game with him. I'm fine. Listen, it's December. If he goes back down for a few months, so be it. I think what this conversation needs to pick back up come post-trade deadline into the playoffs. Like, you got to put your best foot forward come playoff time.
Okay, I can live with that too.
That may be him. Like, during the regular season, you've got cap manipulation, you've got waivers, you've got veterans. And there's certain guys, it's just a foregone conclusion they're going to play. Camp is going to play, whether you like it or not, and Domi's going to play deservedly. Like when Max returns, he's going to play. Reeves is an outlier because of the way he plays and what he represents. And I think he'll come in and out of the lineup as the year goes on. Pacioretty's a bit different, again, because he's older. It's a one-year deal. I don't know what to expect from him when he returns. It sounds like he could be back in a couple of weeks. I would guess probably early into the new year. But he's going to get another chance to play. But if I'm Fraser Minton, I'm doing everything I can with this limited time in front of Craig Berube to make sure Berube remembers me after the trade deadline. And especially when the rosters expand, you get into the playoffs. Because come playoff time, if he's a better player than David Camp should not be playing and Minton should be playing. And I think that's what they'll do, though. I think that's precisely what they'll do.
But I think Jeff is right. Like, they should give this. So when Domi comes back, they have a choice, right? Do they want to make Domi the third line center? Or do they want to keep Minton there? And I kind of think, like, just keep going with Minton a little bit and just see
put Max on his left wing.
Right, put him on the wing, put him in the top six. Like, try to see if he can be something. Because, like, you kind of know what you have with Domi. You know what you have with Holmberg. Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, they need a center. They want a center. They will try to trade for a center. But maybe give this some life, like 10 games. I don't know.
Sure. I think Max is going to play on the wing by the end of the year. Again, I think there's conversations for December 2nd and conversations for April 2nd.
And Jonas, you say they need a centerman? What centerman do they need? Well, they've got Austin Matthews, John Tavares.
You don't think they need a center?
I'm just asking, dude. What center do they need? Who is it?
They need a third line center. I think what they want someone who can eat into some of like the tough matchups, someone who can provide some offense.
Okay. Is there any chance come April, mid-April, that Fraser Minten could grow into that guy from some time up here and into the minor?
Maybe. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's impossible. Like the thing with him is like
who would be a guy out there that you would be looking at to come in and fill that void?
Cyber Monday. You're online. You're looking for deals.
I've looked at some guys. Like they're not like the sexiest names.
Like
who?
Like who? Like I'll give you an example. Like Yanni Gourde, who's been the fourth line center in Seattle. Seattle's probably going to want to try to keep him. Like try to make the playoffs.
Yanni Gourde, I'm not going to lie, that's got my attention.
Right away, yes.
Gourde makes me a little bit horny. A little bit.
Yeah. A winning pedigree, but that was a few years ago.
It's grimy, he's kind of greasy. I don't know how much offense he's going to provide at this point, but that's an example. San Jose has a couple guys like Granlund, Alex Wenberg.
Nope. That's
just flat out
my scouting meetings would go with that.
Delete from basket.
Like that's the problem. Like there's not a lot of players out there who fit what we're talking about. B, the Leafs don't have a ton of stuff that I think that they're going to want to trade. Lots of teams need centers.
This is how this pro meeting would wrap up. If it was us three and what you just said, I would say you can get me Yanni Gourde or nothing. We'll go with Fraser Minten. I'd actually prefer Fraser Minten.
Come on. He's 20. Like he's barely played in the AHL. He's played like 5 AHL games.
It's asking a lot.
It's asking like
sure. Give up another first round pick and another thing and another this and another that.
Yeah, but that's what people say, but it's like, okay, well, the alternative is to do nothing and lose in the first round. Like, what does that get you?
Well, I mean,
this is a clear need.
They've done a whole whack of stuff and lost in the first round.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it was the wrong stuff every time to do.
Sometimes it was.
Sometimes it was, for sure.
I mean, there is a limit to what you're willing to give up based on what's out there. You can't be desperate.
But you also have to realize, like, the prime of your team is right now.
Sure.
Matthews is 20.
They got this year and then 3 more after this.
That many?
Well, that's the Matthews deal.
I guess that makes sense.
Technically, he's got 4. Who knows what's going to happen with him in the future? But
anyway,
yeah, I expect him to be diligent and try to upgrade, but they're not alone. There's another part of that too,
for sure.
Like
that's why it's not like
Soto.
a slam dunk.
Oh, of course.
That's why you just got to try for Soto.
Give it a shot. Put your best foot forward.
$800 million.
Leafs Blackhawks tonight. Kyle Davidson coming up. Their GM will join us later in the hour. We got Luke Wilson in here at 5. Luke, you will help us tee up the Monday Nighter. Get into what we saw in Buffalo last night, what we saw in Baltimore.
Dumbest pick we've
stupid as you guys could ever possibly be.
He talked me. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but he talked me into the weather.
Well,
weather.
How did that not benefit Josh Allen? That's what I didn't understand. Weather, Brock Purdy, we've established this, dude. He looked
like he had his fingers taped up, like bent.
Yes.
He was throwing the ball like he had his knuckles taped up.
Yes. He was bound up in Buffalo. And you didn't think Josh Allen was going to run all over them last night? Dude. It was just like the Packers on Thursday. I tried to warn you guys. Better team, at home, under the lights, bad weather, soft team, warm weather.
Dude, CMC, I don't know if you'll ever see that guy again.
Well, unfortunately, his career, I think, will be more known for injuries than it will be for production and output.
That's a conversation. You think that's true? I don't know.
Listen, man, when the guy's healthy in Carolina, they weren't much of a team. He was a rock star. He had that great – last year was just a phenomenal year. He's hurt all the time. And he got hurt again last night. We're not going to see him again the rest of the year.
No.
And Shanahan admitted after the game, he's like, we are not the same team we were. Like, we're going to work hard and try and all that. Basically, Shanahan, I felt, put the white flag up last night. I think he said, we're just not even close. And we'll see what happens. Our division stinks, so maybe we can backdoor in. But the Niners are in big, big trouble. So Luke coming up in half an hour. Al's brother as well, Hazenbro on the clock tonight. Browns in Denver playing the Broncos. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Kyle Davidson coming up, GM for the Blackhawks in about 10 minutes. Overdrive brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. We'll ask him about what's going on with his team. I mean, it hasn't been a good year for Chicago. And even the Bedard story, the sophomore slump, What's going on with Bedard? Did he play himself off Canada, which I find somewhat rich considering I read yesterday, the second youngest player in the league. Yeah. He's still leading the team in points, and he's on a team that just isn't going to help him much. Like it seems to be all about Bedard, and they brought in all these veterans and tried to prop him up, and there's just no propping right now.
It's just because it doesn't usually happen to wonder kids, the sophomore slump. You know what I mean? It's wonder kids, the next one. You're not talking about why hasn't this guy scored in a month. You don't usually do it. It's unfamiliar territory.
That's valid, and it's a reality of what he just went through. Recently got off the snide, scored, put up some points. But this is a game for the Leafs where you can't look past what they're all about. You know, you remember we were in the building last year when Chicago beat the Leafs 4-1, I think it was. Corey Perry, I think, actually turned the lights out.
Yeah, he had that breakaway goal.
Yeah, and I remember thinking, okay, you know, maybe they got something here. We'll see. It was early in the year, and there's the prototypical Leaf letdown game against a team that is much inferior to them. I'm curious what Stolarz has in store tonight. Sounds like he's going to get the start. Joseph Woll was really good again over the weekend, especially in the third when he was being challenged and peppered. And Wall's been good, man. He just had a 5-1 month. Really good stats. And I think this is what you're hoping for if you're Tree Living and Company, bringing in Stolarz and challenging Wall and hoping that Wall will meet the challenge. And on top of that, so is Stolarz. I mean,
perfect tandem situation right now. Perfect.
Yeah. And you got games tonight, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. They're all going to start. They're all going to get games, and you don't feel like it's a letdown. Stolarz is in tonight. I expect them to play very well.
It's a little like what Boston. Well, it's too early to say that, but what Boston had last year with Allmark and Swayman, where it's like that guy plays, that guy plays, that guy plays, and they both play well.
That's ideal.
That's the dream.
That is the dream. Now, at some point, you need one guy to play.
And then you get to the playoffs, and you're like, oh, we got to pick one.
At some point,
that's
you need
when
one
it gets
guy to
weird.
play.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that was that Allmark won the Vezina 2 years ago as a tandem. I think he started 45 games or something and won the Vezina. This is too early to start, too, because the Vezina's Hellebuck's to lose right now, clearly. And there's a couple of other guys that have been great. But let's say one of the Leaf goalies starts 45 games and leads the league in save percentage. And would they be in the running for that award? Or
playing 45 games?
Yeah. Starting 45. That's basically what Allmark did 2 years ago when he won. I'm not saying he'd win. I think Hellebuck wins this thing. But let's say use Stolarz as an example. Stolarz,
don't even go there, because
45 starts.
Noodles will come on the show tomorrow and light the show.
But
on
I
fire.
would expect Noodles to have. Why wouldn't he appreciate what you're seeing? Because basically, what the argument is, well, he's not a big name, so he shouldn't get that level of respect. If anyone, I would expect to shoot down that narrative, it would be Noodles. Are you arguing against that? Like, I'm just painting a picture. Let's say it's 45 starts, leads the league in save percentage, all these wins.
You won't win.
I'm not saying win.
You're saying, like, be in the conversation?
Could he be third? Could a Leaf goalie be in the top three and nominated for the Vezina? Why is that an impossibility?
Tomorrow at 4:05 p.m., a guy's going to be on that'll have an answer for you.
I am looking forward to
I need to do some research.
It's a hypothetical.
And see what the bar is.
Okay.
How many games do you need to play to win?
You look up the bar. You find that bar.
We don't vote on that. The GMs vote on that.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the GMs is coming up. Maybe we'll ask him point blank. What has to happen for Stolarz or Wall to get your vote?
And then ask him about running backs winning the MVP.
Are you on board with that?
No.
You're pushing for Barkley, or you think Josh Allen's
I think it's Allen's.
Okay, we'll get into that as well. Kyle Davidson coming up. Leafs Blackhawks tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Luke Wilson in studio in 20 minutes. Browns, Broncos tonight, and Leafs, Blackhawks tonight. I love when the Leafs are playing and the Monday Nighter's ongoing, or a Thursday Nighter. You can just go back and forth. It's a beautiful thing. And the Leafs are back home. They were down in Florida all week. They haven't been playing a lot, but they're in action tonight. And Chicago's in town for their only appearance all year. Chicago played yesterday, so you'd think that would benefit the Leafs. We'll see what comes of it tonight. I'm sure our next guest is hoping that is not the case. Because he is the GM of the Chicago Blackhawks. Nice enough to join us on a game day. Here's Kyle Davidson. How you doing, Kyle?
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. We really, really appreciate it. We only get to see you guys in town once a year. We were referencing last year you came through. I think you beat the Leafs 4-1 that night. But in terms of where your development's at, I mean, based on the standings, obviously it hasn't been going great for you guys this year. How would you evaluate your team through the first couple months of the season?
You know what? Like, it's been a bit of a confusing start to the season for us, and obviously, you know, the standings don't lie. That's the the ultimate, indicator of where you're at. But, I think we've taken some pretty nice steps in some areas, that in terms of our team play, right? Like our PK percentage is middle of the league. Our goals against averages is in the middle of the league. Our power play percentage is top 10, yet we're in last place. And I think the thing that's been really tough for us this year is generating offense and scoring goals. And it's tough to get wins in this league when you're scoring 2 or 3 goals a night and not going above that. So, it'd be nice to have generated some more offense and put some more wins on the board. But having said that, there have been steps. It's just, the results have been, disappointing to this point. So,
Kyle, I think we could all agree that if we're turning an organization around, the first thing on anyone's checklist would be, the golden nugget, getting a Bedard, a McDavid, or a Matthews. What would you say, and you've done that with getting Connor Bedard, what would you say would be number 2? Is it like free agency? Is it continuing to draft, shoring up goaltending? What would you say would be 2 on that list?
You know what? To be honest, I think it's probably the development of the group. I think we've got some really, really nice players coming in our system. They may not be in the NHL yet. I think we do have some nice young players on the team, but outside of that, we've got a lot of nice prospects in Rockford in the amateur ranks, and I think it's just getting them developed to the point that they're ready to step into the NHL and impact an NHL team. And some of them are close. Some of them are maybe a year or 2 away. Some of them maybe more, maybe the ones that we just drafted. But we've got volume coming, and so it's just about putting them in the best situation to develop and grow their games and to the point where they're able to step in and contribute at the NHL level. So it takes time, but you mentioned we do have Connor in the mix, and that's the hardest piece to get is one of your future superstars, and then we've got a lot of really, really quality players coming along the way, and so we're really excited about where we're at. But it's about development to this point, and I don't think you ever want to focus on one position over another, but we feel pretty strong at all positions moving forward. We just need a little bit of time to develop them, and hopefully that happens in good time, and they all come along and reach the potential we think they have.
With Kyle Davidson, the GM of the Blackhawks, Chicago leaves tonight down at Scotiabank, and the conversations surrounding Bedard have been fascinating. We've been having them. I mean, we're so captivated by this kid ever since he was a junior and what he did at the World Juniors, and this year it's been labeled a sophomore slump. We've used that term. Yet he's 19 years old. I believe he's the second youngest player in the league, and he's leading your team in points. So how would you describe the season he's had, and how would you match the actual output compared to what maybe you were expecting out of him?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, when he came into camp and even the start of his season, I thought he looked great. He played great. He did go through a little bit of a dry spell there, which was frustrating for him. But again, you mentioned it, 19 years old, the second youngest player in the league. That stuff's going to happen. He's got he's got goals in 2 of the last 3 games, 4 points in the last 3 games. So he's clearly broken out of that little bit of a slump, and hopefully he can continue that moving forward. But I think the thing that everyone, we've heard about Connor for so long, and we've talked to, everyone's talked about him so much recently and over the last couple of years, is that he could still go play for Team Canada World Juniors this year. Like, that's how young he is. And so, I think there's a little bit of slack that needs to be cut for a player that young. But like you said, he's still producing. He's still leading our team in offense in points. And so, he's a great young player. He's going to be a great player in this league for a really long time. But with youth comes a little bit of the ups and downs, and that's okay. That's part of his development. Not all development and everyone's trajectory is linear on the way up, and he's going to experience those dips. But it seems like he's kind of come out of one recently and produced a little bit the last few games, and we look forward to him, continuing to put in the work and producing.
Are there moments, Kyle, where you're like, oh my God, this guy is 19, in both, like, he's so young and yet he's also so mature? Like, do you have a bit of that both ways with him?
Definitely, yeah, no, for sure. He's by far the youngest player in our team, but you also rely on him a lot because you know what, he is a very good player, and he is a major component to our team. But you know, every once in a while, even myself, you have to check things and be like, you know what, he just turned 19 in July, and so like let's factor that in, bake that into the mix, and you know, not let him off the hook when, you know, maybe he needs to be held accountable for something, or the coaches need to hold him accountable for something in his game, because that you know, you need to have that for any player in the NHL. But you know, in the big picture, you have to put in perspective what he's doing at 19 and how young he actually is. You know, and so from that point of view, it's quite impressive. And so we have to be mindful of that, but also you know, hold him to the standard that he holds himself, and that's a high one, and keep him pushing forward to make sure he's growing his game.
With Kyle Davidson, GM of the Blackhawks, the Four Nations face-off is a couple months away, and I believe all the rosters have now been submitted. I'm curious what your experience has been like throughout this process, where, you know, I'm sure you're aware of when scouts are in attendance, when other GMs are in attendance. Let's use Canada, for example, Don Sweeney. You know, he's a GM of a team in the Eastern Conference, so I don't know how much interaction you would have with him all the time. But what's it been like being a sounding board, I guess, representing your team and your players? Because I'm sure you get calls from these GMs and maybe the coaches saying, hey, we're trying to put a team together. What can you tell me about your guys? What has that experience been like for you?
Right, we've got a number of players that would be under consideration for the different countries, and you know, when asked, you just you know, you want to go to bat for your players because we believe in our players and we believe in the people and the players that they are. But in the end, you know what, there's really experienced management groups in for each of those teams, and they know what they're looking for. They know what they're looking to build, and so you know, I don't know how much you know, I can add on my end, but certainly when asked, you go to bat for, and you support the candidacy of any player that's in the running for any of those teams.
Well, in terms of, you know, where you take it from here, and, you know, as we get closer to the trade deadline, you guys are in a unique position where, again, you've tried to bring in veteran players to supplant or supplement some of your younger guys, but Bedard in particular. You have a number of former Leafs, including Peter Mrazek, who's been really good for you guys. How do you juggle the two, Kyle, like making sure you've got vets and making sure you got guys here on your roster that you want to be a part of the team moving forward to help guys like Bedard and others, but also considering, okay, you're in the position you're in, you're likely to be a seller come the trade deadline. You know, how are you planning on deciding who stays, who goes, and kind of juggling those two?
Yeah, I think your position as it pertains to the trade deadline is evolving all the time, and you're taking into consideration everything that you mentioned. You know, the people you want to keep on the team. You know, the value of holding players through the deadline, and in some cases into next year. And then also there's the parallel path of knowing, you know, some of your prospects maybe in Rockford that you know what, they're pushing and they deserve to get a shot at the NHL level, and they're ready to come be contributors, and so maybe you want to open up a spot for them, or conversely maybe they're not ready, and so there's not a need to open up a spot. And so, you know, I think those are just the conversations and the decisions that we'll contemplate over the next couple of months, and we'll also just let the team try and find their way over the next little bit as well. You know, the first part of the season didn't go necessarily the way we wanted it to, and so hopefully, you know, the coaching staff and the players can turn it around a bit and maybe make our decisions a little more you know, difficult in some cases, but we'll let that play out. We'll see how it goes, and you know, we weren't that active last year at the trade deadline, and that doesn't necessarily you know, convey what we'll do this year. I think it's a different discussion, but those are the conversations and the different roadmaps that we'll have to lay out over the next couple of months to determine where we end up, you know, at the trade deadline in early March.
Leafs, Blackhawks tonight. Enjoy it being in town, and we appreciate you doing this, especially on a game day. We'll do it again down the road. Thank you, Kyle.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You got it. Kyle Davidson, the GM of the Chicago Blackhawks.
That guy doesn't exactly have a grizzled sound, does he? Like he's
a young guy, man. Yeah,
he sounds like a young dude.
Yeah, I mean it's impressive to get to the position you're in, at that age, and they got a lot of work to do. I mean, I think Kyle admitted that, and they feel like they got some good young pieces coming. You have Bedard, but it's so much more than that. Like you've got to fill out almost your whole roster, right?
We saw it here, right? You have to get so many things right.
Well, the thing is, when Matthews arrived, though, he came with Marner and Nylander and Hyman and Brown. They had
Kadri and Bozak
and Kapanen exactly. That's Bedard effectively arrived on his own.
And I tried to explain.
I hear what you're saying, but
you got to draft good.
That's
those
the thing.
Leaf kids, they missed 1 year, I think, and they got in the next year. Some of these teams, it's 5 years goes by. Oh, maybe not. And it's yes, they come back with the Leafs don't win crap anyway, but it's at least they got them in year 2.
Yeah. They got in
maybe it was year 1.
They did. Matthews has never missed the playoffs.
But that's
Matthews
the part about
never
it.
Missed.
They didn't miss with those guys. You look at this Columbus guy, they missed. That's a 6th overall pick.
Right.
They take William Nylander 7th or 8th. You know what I mean? Got to nail everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. It's you got Bedard. You need way more than that, clearly.
You need your Nylander and Marner.
Yes.
It's so hard.
And using the Leafs as the example that we can drive from, you also need Kadri waiting and Bozak waiting, and Riley's here already. They had
and even then,
Anderson and a coach in Babcock. And even then, it wasn't enough to do anything great come playoff time, but you could get there.
Yeah.
Hour 2 coming up. Luke Wilson in studio. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.